Yeah, hi everyone. And what I'll do first, so maybe first I thank Tim for joining us. Thanks, Tim, for finding time.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
amazing content. Thanks for putting a lot of work in preparing this week. So I know I have this behind the scenes look and know how much time you spent preparing this, how many comments you had to go through from me, how many times you needed to redo.
No,
But
thank you so much for the comments. You're the expert. I felt like I was learning so much from you.
yeah, so thanks for doing this. Thanks for tolerating all this feedback from me. So the plan for today, I want to quickly go over the project because now we finish week 7 with Bento, and then the next week will be projects. So what I want to do now is I want to go over what you will need to do for the project, where you can find more information, and then we will do our Q&A. So I'll share my screen and have separate channel window for that. So now I will go to our course. So this is the repo for the course. And here we have, so this will be, I think, midterm project, yeah. So to find out more about what we will need to do for the midterm project and in general for the projects we have in this course, go here to the midterm project. And here it talks about, did I not commit? Oh, of course I did not. So live demos. So I will now quickly do git commit, git push. So I did commit, but I did not push. That's so now hopefully when I now reload this page, so you see I just did the git push. So now when I reload this page, good. So we have link to midterm project that is specifically for this iteration. So you click on this and it has some links. Before I go there, I just want to show you what we have in this projects folder. So this projects folder describes, first of all, what you need to do for a project. Let me make it larger. So for the project, you will need to think about a problem you want to solve, and you will need to find a data set for this problem. Usually it's easier for projects to do the other way around. So first find a data set and then think what kind of problem you want to solve with this. But ideally, in practice, you first have a problem and then you find a data set to solve this problem. The easiest way to find a data set is just go to kaggle.com. We actually have a link here. If you scroll down, we have a list with data sets. And you can go through these data sets and find what you like. But in Kaggle, so you can just go to this data sets tab, and you will find a lot of interesting things there. And just anything you like, as long as it's some sort of supervised learning problem, classification or regression, something we studied, you can take and you can do. You can also do, we didn't cover NLP, we didn't cover time series. So if you want to do a project about them, you will need to explain some of the things because not everyone will know what you're talking about. So ideally, it should be what we studied so far. So pick a data set, and then the next thing you need to do here, basically repeat, go through everything we learned. So do the exploratory data analysis, understand what kind of features are important, train a model, tune this model, and then productionize this model. And by productionizing, what I mean is you should have a script for training your model, and you should have a script for serving your model. The script for training your model could be just this usual Python script, and then the way you serve the model, ideally you should do this with BentoML, because I assume this week, for those who already watched all the videos, you saw how easy it is to do this, but there are also other options. So for example, you can follow the Flask plus Docker approach that works too, but with Bento it's much, much easier. So that's what you will need to do for the project. And then, yeah, it describes in more details what exactly are your deliverables, what you need to include in your project. Like you will see it here. By the way, Tim, since you're here, for Bento, when we have Bento, we don't need to have a Docker file, right? So BentoML will automatically create this. So yeah,
Right,
this thing,
right.
so if you use Bento, then you don't need a Docker file, but you just need to describe how exactly you can deploy your thing. So how can you build your Docker container? How can you publish this Docker container? So even though you explicitly might not have this Docker file in your repo, but because you use Bento, it's kind of there. It's provided by Bento. Right? And then once you have this, once you commit everything, there will be a peer reviewing phase where you will need to review 3 projects from your peers, from other students. And these are the evaluation criteria that you will need to use to evaluate the projects. You can go through this criteria, but it's again everything we learned so far. And it's about looking at these deliverables and evaluating each of these deliverables according to a set of criteria, which are described here. Yeah, so you can click on this link, criteria, and you will have a list. Like you will look at the project and you understand, okay, is there exploratory data analysis? How extensive it is, right? And then you see, okay, this is just basic EDA, so I will give this project 1 point. Or this is a really cool EDA, like it goes into many things, so then you give it 2 points. And then you do it for everything. And then I probably need to update it for Bento to make it more explicit. Okay. And yeah, that's how you do this. And yeah, go through this file. And then specifically for this year, what is different from the last iteration, you can go to this thing. So here we want to, so last year, everyone would create a project in their GitHub profile, but here we want to have it centralized. This way we can organize the process easier, and then you will also have all the comments from your reviewers, from your peers in this Git repository. So you will need to run the script, and this script uses GitHub API to communicate to GitHub and then give you a project. This project will be created in organization that I will, let me just quickly find it. So this is here. So we'll have an organization here. And this is one of the projects that was provisioned through this API, that was created through this API. So Timur already, you see, he committed his project from the last year. So this is the project he did. Thanks, Timur. Because last time I checked this project, it wasn't there, and I asked him to commit, so he did this. So this is the project he did. You can also use this as an example. You should also check the projects of other students. And yeah, so you can go through this. And when you review a project, there will be a pull request. So you see, we already have 4 branches, right? And then we can create a pull request. It will be done automatically. And we compare, oops, sorry. For example, this one, right? So it will be, we will create a pull request, reviewer 1, and then, and what you will do is you will need to go through this project, and then if you want, you can leave a comment to any of the files, right? So for example, you say, okay, Timur, why do you use Python 3 instead of Python? That's an example. You shouldn't be picky, like, okay, Python 3 is fine. But this is just to give you an idea, right? So you can, if you want, of course, this is optional. If you want to give feedback to the person who wrote the project, you can actually use GitHub and leave a comment under each of the, under each row, under each line. So that's the idea. Okay, and I know for Tim maybe it's a bit boring, so you will have more details about this. But what I want to do now is I want to start with questions. So first, let me quickly share the link for Slido today. And we will go through questions.
By the way, that wasn't boring. I thought that was interesting.
Was
it made me want to try out the project myself.
Okay, yeah. Well, if you have time, please be our guest. Okay, so just 1 second. I'm trying to find the right project. So I realized that I didn't put the link to live chat like I usually do. Question. Okay, maybe if what I said was too fast, too quick, I will record an additional video where I will go into details of how exactly the peer reviewing process should look like. Right now, you don't need to worry about this. Right now, what you need to do is get a repo through the script that I showed. You will get a repo and you clone this repo to your computer and you start working on this. And then after 2 weeks, you will submit this repo through a form, and then we will start a peer reviewing project. And then by that time, I will prepare a short video explaining what exactly you need to do. So don't worry if what I said was too much. You will get more information about this. Okay, so I added a link to, so you can ask your questions. And right now I don't see any questions, but we just didn't have enough time to give you to ask these questions. And maybe I will start by asking Tim to tell us a few words about what he's doing, what his, where he works and what his role is.
Yeah, thanks, Alexi. Yeah, I work at BentoML and the head of product there. Like I said in the video, I started out my career as a back-end developer, so very familiar with load testing and high performance web services. And then I kind of moved more into product as I found talking to users is interesting as well. I think even more interesting for me a lot of the time, just hearing how users use software and the things that they need solved. So that's what I've been doing for the past few years, and I joined BentoML to kind of do the same type of thing.
But I still see that I could see that you still enjoy doing engineering stuff, right? So this
Oh yeah.
one of the modules was about using Locust for performance testing, right? That was fun, wasn't it? Huh?
Yeah. I love engineering. I love to develop. I develop in my spare time, and when the guys at BentoML aren't watching, I I like to develop on my own too. So I think I will always love to develop. I love to figure things out. Load testing in particular, I think, is something even for developers is kind of difficult to do. It's sort of like you feel like you're pretty much done with the project, and once you've written the code and you've written the tests and you're just ready to be done with it and push it and see it work. Load testing is a whole other practice that could bring up a whole bunch of other issues. The what I've learned over the years, though, is that if you don't load test, it will fail at scale no matter what. There are just things that come up that if you don't load test, you won't find. And yes, it's like a little bit extra work to do, but once you kind of get into it, it's actually kind of fun to see and tweak the code and get it faster and faster. But yeah, I had fun with that module.
So you are wearing multiple hats right now, right? So even though you're head of product, but you also do, these things, demos, because this is not the first time we interact. So the first thing was the open source spotlight demo that you did. So it wasn't a, do you actually have a developer advocate, or that's you right now?
Yeah, that's pretty much me at the moment. I think we have a couple other people that also interact in our community. Bo, one of our founders, does a lot of the management and support in our community as well. But yes, if you're part of a startup, you definitely wear multiple hats. I over the course of my career, I've mostly done startups. I like to join a company when there's only a few people, and then kind of grow the company over time. It's fun because you're always learning things, and then as you grow, you kind of get to see the value in what you're doing over time.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I see that there is a question about Bento, whether it can be integrated with AutoML tools like PyCaret and the like. And actually, we didn't cover AutoML here in this course. So maybe a little bit of background. Tim, you probably can tell us a few words what AutoML is for those who don't know.
AutoML is, kind of automatically training and generating a whole bunch of machine learning models and then seeing which one is the best. It's kind of like a brute force machine learning.
Because here, for example, in module 6, when we were talking about XGBoost, remember the approach we took? So it's called manual tuning. So we started with tuning the learning rate, eta, then we tuned the depth parameter, then we tuned some other parameter, I don't remember which one, right? And then at the end, we arrive at the solution that is good, right? But with AutoML, you don't need to worry about this. So you give AutoML a data frame, or NumPy array, you give it some criteria, then you throw at this, and then you go drink some tea, and then you come back 5 minutes or 5 hours later, and then you have the perfect model, right?
Yep. Yeah, BentoML doesn't really, so we rely on the ML training frameworks to do the training part. So once you have the model itself, that's when you come in and you say bentoml.save. So it's you can integrate it pretty easy with a lot of different training frameworks as long as you can save the model at the end. So MLflow has that MLflow is a tool that generates a lot of models in experiments. And once you find the best one, essentially you save that one with BentoML, and that's the one that you deploy to your service.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that, so short plug, shameless plug, that we have a course. Oops, wrong one. MLOps Zoomcamp. So in that course, we actually talked. So in that course, AutoML wasn't really a topic, but we used it for illustrating some of the concepts from experiment tracking. So here in this module, we talked about experiment tracking, yeah, this one. And here we used HyperOpt, a library for finding the best XGBoost model. And then we used it, we got the best model and we saved it with MLflow. And what I wanted to ask you, Tim, since you mentioned MLflow, how does BentoML integrate with MLflow? Because with MLflow, you do something similar. So with MLflow, so you finish training your model, and then at the end, you say mlflow.xgboost.save model, right? And then you save the model to MLflow registry. And then with Bento, it's very similar, right? So how do these two work together?
Yeah, we have a lot of users who use MLflow and BentoML together. So once you have a model that's sort of your finalized model, you save it to your MLflow registry, and then it depends on what your CI/CD pipeline looks like, but BentoML has a command to import from an MLflow registry. So you can tell it which MLflow model is the one that you want to deploy. And then it's very similar to save model, except instead of pulling from your local environment, you're pulling from an MLflow registry. And so you import the model, it automatically gets pulled into your Bento, and then you can deploy it. There on the BentoML documentation site, there's a big framework document on how to integrate with MLflow. Yeah, right there.
I saw that one of the queries was BentoML versus MLflow. I guess there are also some similarities, right? Because with MLflow, you can serve models.
Yeah, so the thing about serving models is that it's a part of the pipeline that you just have to do. So every single framework out there has some way to serve a model. You train the model, and then it just puts it up there to be able to serve. Typically, frameworks don't specialize in serving those. So BentoML specializes in making the serving part really, really fast and really, really easy. So what you find a lot of the time is when you have serving logic in a really large end-to-end pipeline, it just puts the model there, and then the only thing that you could submit to the model is the data. But we know in practice that there's usually business logic around this, pre-transformation logic, post-transformation logic. There's the version of the model that's saved. There's a lot of these other components that you want around the model, not just the model for inference. And of course, there's the performance layer underneath. So the BentoML architecture kind of brings that all together into one deployable rather than just giving you one point to call inference for your model.
And there is a comment in live chat that I see that there is PyCaret too, right? So it's PyCaret, and then yeah. So this is how you use PyCaret with Bento.
Right, right. Yeah, BentoML has lots and lots of integrations, and we're only adding to them every day. The idea is to get the model from wherever you built it, bring it into your Bento, and then you can deploy it anywhere. Once it's in the Bento, in this standard packaging, it's nice because then we've got lots of different tools to deploy to Lambda, SageMaker, lots of different places. And the places to deploy we're adding to every week and month as well.
Mm-hmm. And since you can have a Docker container at the end, so you do Bento containerize, right? That's the command. And then you have a Docker container, Docker image that you can deploy everywhere where you can deploy a Docker container, right? So it's pretty much every place on the internet, right?
Right. Some places though require specialized,
like Lambda, right?
Yeah, like Lambda, it won't accept just a normal Docker container. You have to actually like create special endpoints. So when we deploy to Lambda, we create those endpoints for you and make sure that it's behind an API gateway and things like that. There for certain services, there are a lot of nuances that we kind of take care of for you as long as you're in the Bento standard format.
Mm-hmm. And for those who had no idea what MLflow is and why we are talking about this, it's okay not to, you don't need to worry about this right now, but at some point this tool and other similar tools will be quite handy. So you can check our MLOps engineering course, MLOps Zoomcamp course after you finish this one. So don't try to do multiple courses at the same time. Yeah, that could be too much. But of course, if you're curious, go check it out. I see that there is a question about the deadline to finish the midterm project. I wanted to show you again how to find all the deadlines. So you go to ML Zoomcamp. So this is our course page. And then you go to cohorts, and then you go to 2022, which is this cohort. And then there is deadline calendar. So you click on this link, and then you see that these are the deadlines. So for midterm project, the deadline is this one, 7th of November. And then there will be also an evaluation phase, and it's due to 14th of November. And then we will learn neural networks, serverless deep learning, and Kubernetes. Yeah, that's the plan right now. Things may change in the future, so this is not set in stone right now, but this is to give you a rough understanding where we will have. Most likely we will stick to this, but things happen. Okay, so I'll mark it as resolved. How a beginner contributor can add value to BentoML project? The project is exciting.
Yeah, awesome question. Honestly, just in the last few days, you guys have all added a lot of value. I don't know how I know you could feel frustrated sometimes when you find bugs, just little things. I think a few people found that dash reload wasn't working on Windows systems. Just finding things like that and reporting them is actually a huge help to us. That way we can find all the different scenarios where it doesn't work. And that makes the library so much better. So I think filing bug reports helps. If you want to contribute to the code base itself, I think there's a couple different easy ways to get started. So I think certainly if you have built a project with BentoML, we're always accepting more projects in our example folder. But there's also this tag, good first time issue as well. So those are all issues that if you kind of comment on them and ask to contribute to build those issues, you can. And
so
yeah, there's kind of, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I interrupted you.
Oh, so good first time issue is a good issue for your first time contributing, and then help wanted is just a tag where anywhere we see need, we tag it with that.
Mm-hmm. So,
although it may be a more advanced feature.
So if somebody wants to contribute and help with Snap AML support, whatever it is, so they just go there and they say, okay, I want to take this feature, or how does the process look like? Or maybe they should first join the Slack community you have and then say, okay, I want to contribute and this looks like a good feature issue. Should I take this?
Yeah, I think the way that it works, you can always join the Slack community and ask. That's usually the best way to get in touch of one of us.
Have a link
And
somewhere,
then,
right?
yeah,
Slack,
just at the
this one.
top there. Yeah. Join BentoML Slack. Yes. So joining the community is always helpful. And then anybody there can point you in the right direction. And then depending on what you want to contribute, we'll kind of walk you through how to structure it. A lot of the time people will need certain features that we don't have, and we'll go ahead and fork the repository and open PRs themselves. That's typically the fastest way to contribute. Is if you need something, then you build it yourself and then open the PR, and then we'll review it and probably have a few comments and then commit it.
Just must warn, or a word of caution, that sometimes just opening a PR without talking to anyone first, any of the maintainers first, may lead to frustration and not understanding why a PR is not accepted, and then okay, like I spent 2 weeks of my time contributing, and they don't want to accept my project. I'm not going to contribute to open source anymore in my life. This has happened to me, right?
Yeah, this has
that was
happened to me
frustrating.
too.
So what I learned from that experience is, first, it's best to talk to the maintainers and ask how exactly they want this feature to be implemented, because the way you might want to implement could not be the same. Like maybe it's not the same way as the maintainers see this feature to be implemented. So it's worth discussing first.
I think that's definitely true, Alexei. I think most of the features out there we've probably heard of, and we already have some thoughts on how we want to do it. So, and we've also seen, it's likely we've seen a lot more edge cases as well. So that's why it's probably a good idea to kind of run your approach past us before you start coding it.
You know why
If you want to contribute it. If you don't want to contribute it and you just want to solve the problem for yourself, you can do it however you want.
Do you know why your CI is failing?
I actually don't.
Maybe somebody, like, because
I think
like
there's some really obscure version of Ubuntu actually
okay.
that is not passing, because we try to regress it on multiple OSs, and I think there's an obscure version of Ubuntu in there.
Okay. I will not go there. But you mentioned that like the best way to contribute is to just run it and see if it works. And then knowing how many different environments students of this course have is already like a good contribution, because all of us have different versions of Windows, different version of I don't know, shells in this Windows, in this OS, right? And then like with Windows, it's always life is always dangerous and full of surprises.
Well, Mac M1 is kind of similar, but yes, Windows can show problems sometimes. I think the best way that I've found to have a consistent environment is just to create an Ubuntu instance in AWS and then just go from there. And then if my environment completely blows up, I can just stop the machine and then start a new one.
I didn't unmute myself. There is a question, what does CI mean? CI is a continuous integration, and this is a way to, let's say you wrote some code, and then you push it to GitHub, and then on GitHub, there's GitHub Actions. You see this link? And then it's a way to automatically run some checks on your code. Run tests, deploy things somewhere, and then actually again, I will do shameless plug. In our MLOps Zoomcamp, we talked about GitHub Actions, and this is this best practices thing. So right now, don't worry about this. Focus on your projects. But after you do your projects, it's really worth spending some time learning about best practices. And these best practices include things like writing tests, using makefiles, and also tools like CI/CD, infrastructure as code. And we cover that in that module. But if you are interested in these things, maybe it's actually worth taking that course too. And we will have another iteration in May. So not super soon, but now it's just I'm telling you that to get you excited. Okay, so let me go back. By the way, are you taking part in Hacktoberfest?
Me?
I mean,
Or,
as you
or
personally or
BentoML?
BentoML?
Yes, actually, one of our developers was asking about that the other day. I think we'll try to do something like that.
Okay, because I think the idea is the idea behind Hacktoberfest. It's very similar to this good first issue that we saw. So you need to add an issue, Hacktoberfest, but then there is also an idea that you give some sort of guidance to the person who is contributing. So you can tell them how do they start, what they should do. So it's more like it's a bit of hand holding, but that is my understanding. I think to take part, you just need to add like an issue here. I don't know, maybe you need to register somewhere explicitly. I see another question in live chat about Kedro. Have you used Kedro, Tim?
No, I haven't.
You know what it is?
I don't. How do you spell it?
I will spell it right now. Kedro, like that. So this is like this is a tool. This is a tool for building machine learning pipelines, and we had a workshop about Kedro here in our channel, so you can check it here. The idea behind Kedro, this is some sort of like this is for training your models. So this is not for serving. This is for splitting. So when for the projects, for the course that you will need to do, you need to come up with this train.py file. But Kedro is a way to modularize, to break into separate chunks this train.py file, such that these chunks are, they're more modular, I guess. So you have a separate function for preparing your data set, for feature engineering, for doing all these things. And Kedro gives you an opinionated way of actually doing this. So they give you a template, and you follow this template, and then they run this. Right? And then
it's cool.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. So we
have like declarative ML pipeline. Got it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then eventually at the end, it still runs on one machine, but it just gives you an easy way to split it into logical units, let's say.
Right.
Yeah, and then also run it. Right. And then it takes care of like any pipeline orchestrator. It takes care of running things in the order you need.
Right. So I'd imagine there would be one final step once you've trained your model, if you like it, that would be a declarative kind of BentoML deploy step.
Exactly, yeah. So for example, if you use MLflow, you save your model in the registry, and then another step would be exported to Bento, or immediately to Bento, skipping MLflow, right?
Right.
Exactly, yeah. And then probably there could be a condition of if performance and validation is above certain threshold, then then do that. Otherwise, don't do anything. Okay, yeah. If you're interested in Kedro, check out this workshop with Merel. Okay, let me go back here. Is there any relation between BentoML and Streamlit or Gradio?
Not really. We have users who use both Streamlit and Gradio. I think Streamlit and Gradio are a bit more about the presentation side. I think we do have a couple users who have asked us about deeper Streamlit or Gradio support, and I think that's something that's probably coming up in the next few months.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know what Streamlit or Gradio is, this is a way to create an interface for your services. Well, Gradio is a machine learning specific, focused on machine learning. So you create interfaces specifically for models, and then Streamlit is just a Python package for creating interfaces. We actually had a project, a Datadog's Club for that. So one of the first projects we had was about Streamlit. And I even have a tweet about this. So this is how Streamlit looks like. So I have a video. So you see that you have this interface, and then based on these toggles, so you move this, and then the score of your model changes. So it gives you an easy way to build an interface like that. And while Bento is focusing on this quite different use case, right? So not building interfaces, but serving models, right?
Right. Yeah, I think one of our users was asking for a really easy way so that once you have your model and your Streamlit UI to be able to create a Bento deployment with one line, and that way anybody that you gave your Streamlit app to would be calling to that service and it could work anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So
which is a nice feature, I think. That
yeah, I think it is. Like I imagine if you have like a Pydantic class there, then you can easily generate like a Streamlit app for that.
Right. Oh, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
And then in addition to the Swagger UI that you have, could be like, having the actual interface.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, that's like a good hackathon project, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because from what I see, let's say you built a model, and then you deploy this model, and then you have this nice API, right? So you can query it with curl. But what if you want to demo this project to your manager or a manager of your manager, somebody who does not necessarily have technical background? So if you give them the URL and say, okay, you need to execute the curl command with post request, they would be like, curl what? Like, what do you want from me? Like, just show me how it looks like. And then this is when tools like Streamlit come in handy. So instead of giving them a curl, a command line interface to query it, you just give, okay, this is the link, play with this. And if Bento could do something like that, automatically generate, then many data scientists would thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking because I figured there's a library that turns Pydantic models into Streamlit apps, and it looks like there's
already an app
that does that. Yeah, I wonder if we could just plug into that app and then have that same thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Okay, that's another.
That's kind of the cool part of open source, is that there's so many people out there with so many different projects, and we get to collaborate with them and kind of build the best, collaborations and kind of combinations of these tools.
Okay, am I still sharing my screen? It appears I am not. No. I don't know what happened. When did I stop sharing it?
I think it's the same as when you stopped sharing it. Maybe a few minutes ago.
So once for a live stream, I was accidentally sharing my downloads folder for, I don't know, like 15 minutes. But luckily, I didn't have anything that I shouldn't show.
That's good.
Okay. In the weekly projects that we implemented, we did not use scaling techniques like standard scaling. Isn't it important to use it before building the model? It is. Quite important. I wouldn't say it's a must for all the projects. So for example, if you use something like a tree-based model, then you shouldn't worry about scaling. I think I shared links to our office hours from the previous year. Let me quickly show it to you again. So if you go to cohorts in the previous year, and then you go to midterm project, and I think this is week 9. In week 9, you will see an example of, it's probably week 10. So in this week, we show you how to use pipelines. Yeah, scikit-learn pipelines. And this is an amazing concept. In these pipelines, so far what we've been doing is we were doing dictionary vectorizer, dict vectorizer, and then it was followed by a model, right? And then in case of Bento, we needed to save this dictionary vectorizer separately as an artifact, as a binary, and then we needed to load this, and then we needed to apply the model. But with pipeline, you can actually train a pipeline and just use BentoML to save the pipeline. there are, like, it can be saved, right? So you can just take a pipeline and do bentoml.scikit-learn.save model, and then the entire pipeline will be saved, right? I see you're nodding. Yeah. So this is a cool
Yes.
thing. And so the reason I'm telling you that is, wait, I actually don't have an example, but you can include this feature scaler here in your pipeline. There should be an example somewhere. I think we did that last year. Okay, there is an example without a pipeline. So I think if we go to maybe classification, should be here, classification, and then notebook scaling. Yeah, this one. So in this notebook, we show how to scale your features. Yeah, this one with standard scaling or min-max scaler. And if you check office hours, I think it was office hours number 3 from last year. I talk more about that. So it is an important topic. It was just intentionally we did not include this because we cannot include everything, right? But this is an important topic. So I recommend that you check it. And using pipelines is cool. Because you will not need to save all this scaler, dictionary vectorizer, all these things separately. Let's say with Bento, you can just take one pipeline, save it with Bento, and then you will have one binary, one model. It makes things easier.
And if you do have any kind of custom tokenizer or scaler or vectorizer, you can always add it to that custom objects field.
Yeah. So we talked about MLflow, and with MLflow, it's very annoying, to be honest. So with MLflow, I need first to save this in a file, right? And so then I have a pickle file, and then I tell MLflow, okay, there is an artifact that is already in this file that I want to upload together with the model. So I upload it together with the model, and then when I want to use it, I need to download this from the registry, and then I need again to use pickle to load this in memory. So there is too much overhead, and with Bento, I really liked how easy it is to save extra stuff.
Right. Yeah. In our first version of BentoML, we were just saving models, but then we had so many users saying, "Well, how do I? You save my tokenizer too, along with the model," because a lot of the time the tokenizer, the vectorizer, is sort of one-to-one with the model. You may have a version of that as well, so it's nice to be able to version it with the model.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a bit distracted.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Oh, well, there was a push notification, and then so I should turn them off because they're distracting. So in your experience, Tim, do you think data scientists usually take care of model deployment or it's somebody else?
This is a really great question, and I think I don't have a good answer for it because I think because the industry is evolving so quickly. So I've definitely seen data scientists being in charge of deploying models, probably where the data scientist is one of the only kind of engineering resources, or the engineering resources that are there are too busy. Because you know, if you're a data scientist and if you build a model, the way that you scale the business value of that model is having that model deployed as an API. And so if somebody has to do it and there's no resources anywhere else, then yes, the data scientist can do that. And we try to make that as easy as possible. In larger teams, I think typically not. You'll probably have at least some type of DevOps or ML engineer that will help you deploy your model. But knowing kind of how the model deployment pipeline works, I think is pretty important. That way you can work better with your engineers. I think it's always nice to kind of know at least sort of the high and medium level of how it works and how to do it end to end in fairly simple scenarios. But yeah, if it becomes more complicated, I think it does take somebody with a little bit more specialized knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm just curious, the target audience for BentoML, is it data scientists or is it machine learning engineers?
It's kind of both. We try to make the deployment of your ML model as easy as possible, whether that's for the data scientist or the engineers. I think we have a lot more detailed features for the engineering and ops side that maybe a data scientist may not care about immediately. But yeah, I think it's both. I would say it's half and half.
Mhm. Okay. Because interesting thing. So, for example, for this course, when we were, so this course is based on a book, and when I was writing this book, I had in mind a software engineer who wanted to switch to machine learning engineering. And then we ran the course, and then in the course, in the form, there was like this field role where I asked you, everyone who signed up for the course, to specify what they are currently doing. And funny thing that most of the people, most of the students were data scientists, and it was surprise for me. Like I was expecting software engineers to join this because this was the target audience, and then the reality is different. So I guess maybe for you something similar happened, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm I'm guessing we see probably more engineers than your ML camp does. So an engineer like me is not going to know much about training. And I think that's one of the questions down below. I think it's good to know the concepts of training, and that's why, I participate in ML Zoom camps like this. But as you scale the team, I think you learn to specialize a little bit more. I think it's just like small company versus big company. You're a small company, you wear a lot of hats, and then the bigger you get, the more people you get to hire, and you wear fewer and fewer hats. And that's just the nature of being either a small or a big company. It sort of just depends on what you like.
And maybe I'll also add to this question is even if you have a team where you have ML engineers, backend engineers, other engineers, data engineers, there still could be cases, there still could be time when they are busy with something else because they have other priorities. I don't know, they have, like, I don't know, in our case, it was a big monolith and they were very busy decoupling it, creating microservices because it was very important. And I was annoying them with deploying the model, and then they simply did not have time for that. Right. And then sometimes it may happen that even though you have people on the team, they cannot necessarily jump on this problem right now. And being able to deploy a model is helpful, right? It doesn't have to be a super, how to say, resilient, super available, super reliable, right? But if it's deployed, if it could be used, then it's already a good thing, right? And then tools
Right.
like Bento, they help a lot with that. They help data scientists to just do a good enough version that doesn't break, right? And then when engineers become available, then they can take care of tuning this.
Right. And even when the team gets big enough, engineers will hand the deployment over to DevOps as well. So as you get bigger, you get more and more separation and specialization.
Can we use BentoML with Colab?
I think yes, we have a few examples on our website. I think with Colab, it becomes a little bit more difficult to, once you're hosting the bento, to access it if it's running on a Colab server. But yeah, you can save it. What I would say is you can save your model and then export it to somewhere, where you can, or you export your model to somewhere where you can then build your bento there.
So because by default, Bento saves in a local file system, right,
Right,
in your
right.
/home. So you need to have a way to save this model somewhere. Let's say, I don't know, on the cloud, S3, whatever, somewhere externally. And the workflow here is that you train your model in Colab, you save it, and then you deploy it somewhere, right? So you don't deploy it on Colab instance.
Right. So when you save your model, I think it'll save to the Colab instance. Then you have to use BentoML export to push it to like an S3 bucket or something where you can pick it up. and deploy your bento.
And then as options for deploying, we discussed already in the course, we looked at Elastic Beanstalk. It can work with, I assume it can work with Bento. I haven't checked.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
what we saw in this week, we saw how to deploy it with ECS, right? And then we can also deploy it to Kubernetes EKS. We can also deploy it to Lambda. And there are a ton of other options. So everywhere where you can deploy a Docker container, Docker image, you can deploy it there, right?
Yep. Yep.
What is the reason behind BentoML generating dedicated directory of models? So this is what we just talked
Right.
about.
Yeah, I think a couple people asked this in ML Zoomcamp Slack. I was thinking about this a little bit. I think it's sort of a philosophical thing where we sort of think about models and bentos sort of separately a little bit than code. So your project directory is where all the stuff that you'll commit to Git, right? And I don't think we think that it's the right model to commit your models to Git, for example. So we think of ourselves a little bit more like Docker. So you don't have Docker images in your project directory, right? You just have your Docker file, and that's what you commit to Git. So in the same way, we have we store your models and your bento in that dedicated directory, and then sort of leave it up to you to push it to different places where you might build or where you might need it.
But do you know why you decided to save it locally on your local file system? So for example, what MLflow is doing, you can save it to S3 directly, but in case of Bento, you always first to local storage, right? And then you decide,
Right.
this model I want to export, but for the rest I don't care.
Right. I think it's because first, because I think that's the easiest way to do it, but also because I think with BentoML, the workflow is usually somebody's building a model. A lot of the time, somebody's building a model on their laptop, or somebody's building a model in a slightly less distributed system, and they're assembling their bento there. So I think that the fastest way to access that model is locally. And we do give you the ability to push that model and pull that model from other places. But ultimately, when you assemble your bento, and then you assemble your container, all that stuff has to be there. So I don't think we wanted separate abstractions for when a person is training and saving versus when a person is building a bento and pulling in the model and assembling your container. It's just the same abstraction, which is just a local repository which contains models.
And maybe you don't want to save every a model every single time you, like, I don't know, change one single parameter to the cloud, right? So maybe at the end, after all this, the experiments, you want to save the final one. While for MLflow, the use case is different. You actually want to save every single experiment because you want to see the results of this experiment.
Right. That's why, right. Yeah.
Okay. I think this one is related to what we were talking about, like should data scientists be able to deploy models? And then the comment here, or the question, is that ML engineers should be able to work on the whole machine learning pipeline, not only deployment. What do you think, Tim?
I think ML engineer is a fairly new title. I do think it implies that they should work the whole pipeline. I am not sure that the industry is going to end up with these individual people who can do the whole thing end to end and be really good at it. That doesn't seem like a scalable approach to me. I think eventually you'll find that the tools will get better or good enough where people can specialize and not have to know every part of the pipeline. But I think it's helpful, not know every part of the pipeline in a really deep way. But I think it's helpful for everyone to kind of know the pipeline at a high and medium level to be able to collaborate better.
So
Because
what
collaboration, especially in ML, is difficult because there's so many people involved.
so what I see in practice is often data pipelines are built by data engineers, and then there is a bit of feature preprocessing, feature engineering, all that, and usually data scientists take care of that. And then ML engineers, they focus more on actually deployment and then scaling, and then DevOps, MLOps kind of people, they support more on the infrastructure side, like how can we make sure that Kubernetes is running, that all the logs are saved, like that we can monitor the whole thing. At least this is what I see around me in the company where I work. I talk to a few other companies and they have a similar setup. Yeah, sometimes ML engineers, they work indeed on pipelines, training pipelines too. But I think it's more common than data scientists do this. At least from what I see, I haven't interviewed, let's say, many companies. Just talked to a bunch of people here in Berlin when I go have lunch, and then I talk. Okay, tell me about how your organization works, like what kind of roles you have and what kind of responsibilities, and this is what they tell me. I
Yeah, I
assume in
think
Google
as
it'd be
the
different. Yeah, sorry.
no, I think as the industry matures, the specializations will become more clear. So 15 years ago in software development, DevOps didn't even exist. And software engineers were supposed to be doing the builds and the testing, everything. And then we realized, okay, we need somebody who kind of bridges ops and development. That became DevOps. And then the software engineers, as we progressed in data, were doing all the transformation and the pipelining and everything else. But then we said, oh, actually, we need data engineers. So that became another thing. So I think as the industry matures, the specializations will become more clear. But there'll always be, I think the early people in the industry who benefit, and companies who benefit from people who work the whole pipeline.
I think there is a term, full stack data scientist, right? That's a person
Right.
who can do. I don't know if it's still
Yeah.
a thing, but a couple of years ago it was, I think. But now we have ML engineers. Before, like it wasn't like a very prominent role, but now we see more and more ML engineers. Okay, you probably see that it's getting darker where I am, and it means that it's 6 o'clock already, and we should be wrapping up. And I have a question to you, Tim. So if people
Sure.
have questions to you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
The best way to reach out to me is in the BentoML Slack. Usually you can join our Slack group and then you can just directly message me.
Okay. I think when I joined the community, what I got first was an automated message from Bo welcoming me.
Yeah. Right.
Still happens, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I maintain that message. I think right now there's a Zoomcamp message on there saying if you're here, asking for support for Zoomcamp, just join our channel.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us today. Thanks a lot for sharing all your expertise, experience. Again, thanks for the awesome content. Really great. And it was nice having you here asking questions.
Yeah, it was nice being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, thanks everyone for asking questions. I hope you're having fun. Again, if you have any problems with the content, please write in Slack. And then after, maybe if you're watching this after the iteration is over, and if you want to get some support from Bento, the best way to get this support is join the BentoML community. Okay. That's all for today. So have a great rest of your day.
All right.